What are the differences between a winter and a summer poultry ration, and what are the advantages of feeding those, switching from one to the other? Now, in my mind, when winter comes, I'm ready for, mashed potatoes and stews and soups. And when summer or spring comes, you want something lighter, salads and all that. I'm assuming there might be something like that for poultry.
Very much the same. So, in the wintertime, the birds are going to need more energy to stay warm during the colder temperatures. In the summertime, they're not as interested in energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we want to actually increase the proteins and decrease the total amount of feed that we give them. So in your hot part of summer, feeding a 19 or a 20% protein feed, is advantageous. Whereas in the winter, in Alberta or, in the Canadian plain states, prairie, you could be down to feeding a 13 or a 14% protein feed. That's much higher in energy and calories to meet the demand of the bird. Their diet shifts just like our diet does, based on the season, based on the temperature, activity level, production level, all of that. And so having the flexibility or the ability to change the diet, as the seasons change is excellent, but not everyone has that opportunity. It's not that easy for everyone.
That's right. So let's say that somebody is feeding your average 17% commercial layer ration.
Mm-hmm.
How do they make adjustments to that to to go with the season? How do you increase the protein in the summer and decrease it in the winter?
Right. And, in the summer, adding another protein source, everybody knows I'm a fan of either fish meal or crab meal, but, adding those dense type proteins that don't really have a lot of energy to them can be easily added in the summertime. And then in the wintertime, and if you don't have it, I think you do, but, there's a chart that I created based on temperature, how many calories a bird needs, and kind of how to adjust the feed for that. But I would stay on the 17% protein feed. Like I said, add the fish meal in the summer to get it up to the 19%. And then in the winter, we would just add something like whole wheat, cracked corn, triticale, something like that. That doesn't push the protein anymore, but it actually adds calories to the feed. Another option would be even to add like vegetable oils, right? So vegetable oils are extremely high in energy.
Right.
They're almost 2.5 times. A cooking oil is about 2.5 times the energy of wheat. Okay? So, wheat being somewhere between 14 and 1500, and cooking oil being 3900. Right. So that's just as an example. Pretty much all the oils are the same as energy. So it doesn't, whether it's canola, whether it's flax, whether, it doesn't really matter.
So then here in our cold countries, you could think of feeding them some suet.
You could.
Give them
if somebody was right next door to, a butcher shop, especially if they were doing like grass-fed beef, if you could get boxes of the fat trimmings from beef or pork or, whatever works for you, right? You could use a large type electric roaster pan, turn that on, let that cook down, let the fat come out of it, strain out the chunks. You don't have to do all this, but you could actually make your own suet cake with some whole wheat or, some other small grains. And you can make it in a large block. I mean, it depends on the size of your flock, but you could, you could use a 5-gallon pail as your mold, and you could make large pecking blocks. There's no reason not to. I think if I was going to make my own suet block, so to speak, I would probably actually even incorporate some ground alfalfa along with some whole grain, and get that to form together.
Mhm.
because in the winter they don't have the grass out on the pasture.
Right.
So this would give them an opportunity to get some greens in their diet and help keep the egg yolk color where you want it to be.
Mhm.
Also some additional vitamin A.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
I was thinking even very simply, if you do have access to the fat trimmings, is to just hang it like you do for like some people do for birds,
you
and
can do that too. Yeah,
they
work
just go and peck at it, and that will, you know, with that extra energy, they won't eat more of the ration. If you are stuck with a 17% layer ration, because if they eat more, I mean, that's always when we seem to see larger eggs when
right,
they, and that can cause issues for your birds too.
right. Because they're eating more feed and they're getting more protein, and with that extra consumption of protein, that egg size goes up.
Hmm.
And then you have other side effects or problems. So,
Right.
right, if you can't adjust your feed, like we talked about, then some tallow, some any type of fat is a good thing if you
Mhm.
have access to it. So,
Right.
yeah,
Sounds good. I'm gonna go do some cooking.